Welcome back to the Halo Way podcast. In this episode, we're talking about a growth mindset, both fostering one and finding an organization with one. From bedroom startup to global organization, a growth mindset has been essential for getting Halo where it is today. For this episode, I was inspired by a book which focuses not on success, but on the traits of remarkable people, which unsurprisingly includes that growth mindset. I really enjoyed my conversation with this guest, and I hope you will too. So I'm excited to say that today I'm joined by Canva evangelist, surfer enthusiast, and author of Think Remarkable, Guy Kawasaki. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Sure.
I'd love to just start by, if you don't mind introducing yourself, just for our audience, so they can get a feel for who you are.
My name is Guy Kawasaki. I am the chief evangelist of Canva, and I am the host of the Remarkable People podcast. In a prior life, I was chief evangelist of Apple. I was on the board of trustees of Wikipedia, and I was a Mercedes-Benz brand ambassador. I'm also a writer. I have 16 books. My most current book is a book called Think Remarkable.
Thank you. So that's how actually I came across you, as partly the podcast and partly the Think Remarkable. And what I really enjoyed about the book was the fact that you're not saying sort of how should you think about being successful or how should you think about fame. It's sort of this remarkable aspect, which I think people haven't really tapped into. Sort of how did you get interested sort of in that specific aspect of sort of humanity?
Well, I have this podcast called Remarkable People, and it now has about 250 episodes. And these people include Jane Goodall, Stacey Abrams, Neil deGrasse Tyson, Stephen Wolfram, Stephen Wozniak. You don't have to be named Steve to be on my podcast, though. Don't get the wrong impression. And so now there's 250 hours, there's 5,000 pages of transcripts, and nobody's going to read that much or listen to that much. So we decided to distill the inspiration and we decided to distill the information and inspiration down into a book, and that's what we got. Think Remarkable. It's 70 pages.
Yeah, it's quite concise. It's definitely not the longest book, but I think it's just really impressive the amount that you managed to put in there, and it's sort of not quite self-help, but there's so much you can actually extract from that in such like a meaningful way. How did you sort of decide, sort of listening to 250 hours, listening to all of these people, how did you actually manage to distill that into sort of one piece?
With a great deal of effort. Well, so, after you've done this for 5 years, you see certain patterns that, sort of pop up to the surface. So at the highest level, it was clear that remarkable people have a growth mindset. They have a grit mindset. And then towards the end of their careers, they have this grace mindset of paying back society. So those three things sort of popped out, and that created the sections of the book. And then we just looked at common practices, and we kind of reviewed all 5,000 pages of the transcript, and we framed that within my 40 years of frontline experiences in entrepreneur and in Silicon Valley. So that's kind of how it sounds easier when I just described it than what it was to do. Trust me, it was a challenge.
I bet. And I know that you don't necessarily count yourself as a remarkable person, but I'm sure everybody else who listens to anything and reads your book would definitely count you as a remarkable person. Do you feel like when you were going through it that these were sort of lessons that you'd also picked up along the way, that you'd already been practicing?
That is, I wish I could tell you I was so remarkable, I was already doing all this. That would not be true. So yeah, I learned quite a lot. And of course, I figured that if I learned something, I mean, other people could learn it too. So uh, when you're writing a nonfiction book and you're not just trying to focus on one topic, there are many books that 200 pages, they talk about how to pivot, 200 pages, how to make a minimum viable product, 200 pages, how to achieve critical mass, but but that's not what this book is, because quite frankly, I don't know why it takes 200 pages to explain something like that. And any of those concepts that we notice with the remarkable people, we took 2 or 3 pages to explain, because I don't think you need to read 200 pages about how to pivot. you know, you make this product, you get it out, and then if it fails, you try something else. I mean, I just summarized 200 pages. So that's what we're trying to do. The book is really meant for Gen Z, and I don't think Gen Z wants to read 200 pages about one concept.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I think it would be fair enough to say, yeah, they definitely like things that are a bit more concise. Um, why was there a specific intention sort of aiming that at Gen Z rather than any other generation? Is it just because they're sort of up and coming, or did you have something specific in mind?
I don't know if I exactly intended it for Gen Z from day one, but as I was soliciting feedback and I had more readers, a lot of people were saying, "Oh, I got to give this to my kids. I got to give this to my grandkids. I got to give this to my students." And so, and I'm a boomer. I'm 70 years old, so I search for things to give to my kids too. So that's how it became pretty obvious that, like, it's too late for the boomers. So you got to get it to the boomers' kids or boomers' grandchildren.
But that's so interesting that you say that, because you definitely sort of talk about how it's never too late, how you took up surfing quite late, how you took ice hockey up quite late.
Well, I mean, more power to you. You notice hypocrisy, but I'm telling you, at 70, it's a little late to start something completely new. I mean, I took up surfing at 60, and that's considered kind of, 50 years too late. But
So you're saying 60 is the cutoff point?
but for surfing, yes.
That's fair. That's quite an intense sport. Um, I'm particularly interested in sort of the Gen Z aspect because our company is full of graduates. Um, that's probably the largest proportion of sort of demographic that we have. And I think what was really interesting is sort of the bit about growth that you were talking about, and how obviously there are things that you can do personally, but also the environment sort of that you're in. How that's also really important. And I think sometimes you hear too much about what you need to do. And if you, yeah. So would you mind sort of like explaining that a bit?
Well, the work of the growth mindset is primarily from Carol Dweck.
Mhm.
And she was all about explaining that there's a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. And that really captivated me. Her work was done in the early 2000s. And just recently, she had a protege named Mary Murphy. And she brought up the concept to Carol Dweck that, listen, it's not just what's in your head, that is, what's your personal mindset. But it also depends on the environment that you're in. Because if you have a growth mindset, but you're in a fixed mindset organization, things are not going to go well. So I came upon Mary Murphy's work very late in the writing of this book, and I wish I had met her and read her material earlier. But I the lesson is that you need not only a personal growth mindset, but you also need a corporate or organization mindset that enables and fosters and even accelerates the growth mindset.
What are some things do you think you ought to look out for if you're looking for an organization that has sort of those aspects?
I think that any organization with a particular growth mindset, in particular, I think you should look for diversity in that workplace. You should look for, uh, people of various genders, people of various sexual orientations, languages, races. You look for diversity that shows a growth mindset and a support of the growth mindset. I also think that you look for companies that have training programs, because if you have a training program, essentially you're saying that, we believe in your potential. We believe in investing in you. So we're going to train you to be better. And if you look for a company that doesn't have training programs, or if you look for, if you find companies that don't have training programs, I think there's an inherent message there that either we think that you're stuck in the role that you entered our organization in, or we believe you're perfect and you don't have to learn anything. And neither of those things are optimal.
Hearing Guy's thoughts on having a growth mindset at an organizational level really resonated with me and what we're doing here at Halo. And it actually reminded me of the episode we had with Tim Bowers, where he talked about going from the service desk to head of PSA and the variety of different roles he had in between, which, if you know anything about Halo, is really not uncommon for people to have worked across entirely different roles in the company. So if you do want to check out his episode all about growth and mindset as well, you can find a link in the description. So you've worked in a lot of different places, and obviously you seem to have both sort of the technical skills and what people might kind of think more about sort of soft skills.
Well, I fooled a lot of people, but yeah.
Oh, really? Tell me, how did you fool people?
I kept showing up. I mean, I think 80% of success is just keep showing up, because most people simply do not keep showing up.
Really?
Yes, really.
That's so interesting. I'm trying to think of an application sort of to put that to, but that's, yeah. So you wouldn't say sort of either one is sort of particularly important. You just need to be there.
Well, I don't know if you can say just be there. I mean, you have to just be there, and you have to do the work. I mean, you have to care, but it starts with showing up. I mean, if you look at athletes, there are a lot of naturally talented athletes, but the ones that ultimately survive are the ones that keep showing up. They keep practicing, they keep trying, right? They don't just depend on their natural talent and just say, I'm just gonna win and it's gonna be all natural. I mean, you have to pay the price. There's nobody in my book or my podcast who said, yeah, I was born perfect, I was born remarkable, I just showed up once and boom, I was remarkable. It doesn't work that way.
I guess, yeah, it's that kind of consistency aspect and knowing that there's no real shortcuts to things. Like, you do just have to put in the work.
Well, the only shortcut I can offer is read my book. I mean,
Yeah. I'd endorse that 100%. It's a really good read and listen. Yeah.
well, you're the target.
Well, I really liked how so I listened to it and I've read it, but how you've split up the audio between different people. Obviously, you read a bit of it, and I think that's such like a nice personal touch. Did you always want to read?
Well, I mean, listen, the ultimate personal touch is if the author reads the entire book, okay? But I have done that, and let me tell you, it is a very hard and long process. And you should figure that for each recorded hour, you probably spend 5 or 6 hours. So it's about a 6-to-1 ratio. And many of these books are 40 hours long. So that's, 6 times 40 is 240. And if you work 8 hours a day, that's like 30 days. I mean, it's a lot of work. Maybe I'm exaggerating. Maybe it's not 30 days, but it ain't 30 minutes. And it takes a lot of effort. So what I thought I would do is I would just read the parts that are most personal, which would be the introduction and the acknowledgments and stuff like that. As opposed to every single word of every single chapter. I also think that even though I'm a podcaster, I'm not a professional voice actor, and that's different, right? So a professional voice actor, listening to me 1 hour once a week on a podcast is different than listening to 30, 40, 50 hours of a book. I mean, trust me, it's for both the producer and the consumer, it's a very different game.
I'd be happy to listen to that much of you, but maybe that's just me personally.
Or maybe I'll make you a special edition.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'd love that. I was wondering, because you've done such a diverse range of different things, how, and I guess in some instances you have pivoted from one thing to another. Sort of, how have you decided to make these changes? Has it always come quite naturally to you, or do you just think I need to do
Well,
something?
If you're looking for an answer where I tell you that I had everything figured out, I'm going to disappoint you because it's not at all true. Uh, yeah, I mean, I'm a guy who went from jewelry to personal computers to software to internet to, venture capital, back to software and hardware, then back to Canva is an online graphics design service. So there was never a plan, a grand architectural scheme. I mean, I was just sort of, when I fell in love, I fell in love, and I would switch industries, and I've been in 3 or 4 industries. Yeah, as Steve Jobs said in his commencement address, you can only connect the dots looking backwards, and I am proof of that. You could not have predicted where I would be by looking at my youth, not at all.
What were you doing? Anything interesting? Sort of skeptical in your youth?
Nah, I mean, I love playing football. I love girls. I mean, I don't, I wish I could, I wish I could give you some very impressive thing. Like, I fell in love with astrophysics at the age of 5. And I started, Newton was my hero. And I mean, I can't, that would be a lie.
But I think that's like a good lesson in sort of just following your instincts. I think a lot of people are quite not calculating, but they do like to plan forward, especially sort of career things. And actually, I think you do miss out on opportunities by being too sort of carefully down one road. You shut off everything else that comes towards you.
Well, I mean, the truth is that this is one of those kind of things that you have to be careful about what you read and what you believe, because for every example of, oh, this is an example of someone who found his or her love very early and stuck with it for 90 years, that would be Jane Goodall, right? On the other hand, there are people like me who go from one thing to the other. And so, I mean, which one do you believe? They both have success stories. You never hear about the failures, however, and they both can work. And I think one of the things that I learned about remarkable people is that remarkable people can keep 2 conflicting ideas in their head. so,
Right.
so that's what it's going to take. I mean, sometimes it's pivot, sometimes it's stick with it.
Yeah, I guess sort of, I don't know, I once had the best piece of advice was to learn how to kind of be discerning with what advice you take. Because obviously everyone's different, so none of it really applies to everyone as a blanket.
Yeah, I mean, and if somebody says that they know exactly what you should do, you should run from that person. That person is lying. That maybe lying to himself or herself too. But
I was
uh,
That's a shame. I was going to ask you about what I should do, but
yeah, well, I listen. I could tell you that. I mean, I could tell you, oh, you should listen to your heart and pursue your passions. I could also tell you that, yeah, maybe your passion is not going to be rewarding in the long term, or maybe it's not going to be economically viable to be I don't know, to be a French pastry chef. I don't know, but I mean, who am I to tell you? And I think that what will happen is you're going to muddle through life. You're going to make some decisions right. You're going to make some decisions wrong. And then you're going to look back one day and you're going to say, thank God I got fired from that job. That was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Mhm.
But at the time, you're going to think, oh my God, you got this job working for Goldman Sachs or McKinsey, and then you got fired and your life is over. And then 10 years from now, you're going to look back and say, thank God I got out of McKinsey and got out of Goldman Sachs.
Well, it sounds like some of that though is to do with mindset, because obviously that if you were fired in that situation, everyone would probably be disappointed. But it's how you sort of bounce back from that and how you kind of might use that as an opportunity.
Well, part of that is the growth mindset, right? Well, people with a growth mindset will try different things. And the flip side of a growth mindset is that you have embraced yourself for vulnerability, because when you try new things, you will be vulnerable. It's very unlikely that you're going to decide, oh, one day I'm going to take up surfing, or one day I'm going to take up violin, or one day I'm going to take up astrophysics. and instantly I'll be successful. So when you try something new and have a growth mindset, you better be prepared that you're going to suffer through failure and setbacks.
Yeah. Well, what is the best way to foster a growth mindset apart from just doing things, I guess?
You said it. It's just doing things and understanding that not everything is going to work out. You have to prepare yourself to be vulnerable, as I said, and then you need supportive people who are going to support you through thick and thin, and you need to keep your eye on the ball. That like, uh, don't expect instant success. It's easy for someone who's 70 years old to tell you this, but I mean that's. I had a lot of failures in my life too. Don't get me wrong. So,
Do you think Gen Z is? Do you have an idea of whether they're better or worse at kind of the growth mindset and coming up?
I think that every generation thinks that they worked harder and more seriously than the next generation. And my father said that about me, and I'm saying that about you, and you're gonna say that about your kids. And it's just the way it is. And in a way, it's a lot like music. Like every generation believes that the younger generation's music is crap, right?
Mhm.
So like my father probably thought, oh my God, who are these people called the Beatles on Ed Sullivan? They're just jumping around the stage like they're crazy people, right? And so like, who the hell are the Beatles? The great music was big bands and jazz. And then the next generation comes along and says, we love the Beatles, but wow, who the hell are these rappers? Like all they do is swear and that's not music. And then along comes the next generation, and I promise you that someday people are going to be saying, well, where are the great musical talents like in my generation? In my generation, we had real musicians, real talented people like Justin Bieber. There's nobody like Justin Bieber anymore. I mean, all they're doing is this crap music. I'm telling you, that day is going to come. I mean,
I'm excited for that. I think it's gonna be funny.
someday when somebody says, where are the really talented people like Justin Bieber? You remember I said this on June 19th, 2024.
I will.
I guarantee you people criticized rappers, they criticize the Beatles, they criticize, Creedence Clearwater Revival, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. I mean, you don't even know who I'm talking about right now, right? But everyone was criticized.
Oh, I guess it's all just very cyclical a lot of the time. You think things are new and it's just the same.
Well, I think the realization is that nostalgia is overrated, basically. I really truly believe that in American politics right now, there are a lot of people who are saying, oh, wow, we want to go back to the good old days of good old red, white, and blue America, and like, and because those are better days. People were harder working and people were honest and everybody was happy. And I look at them, I say, what period of time are you talking about? So out of the 60s and the 70s. So, guess what? In the 60s and the 70s, black people had it even worse than today. And, you couldn't have an interracial marriage till the late 1950s. And there was the Environmental Protection Agency because all these chemical companies had these super sites. They're pouring chemicals into the rivers and like, you want to go back to that time where there's all these riots. You want to have a Vietnam War. I mean, like, what the hell are you talking about? I mean,
yeah, I can really see that with the nostalgia being, overrated. Yeah.
nostalgia is overrated. I'm telling you. Look to the future, not to the past.
Just to pivot slightly there. Yeah, I was just thinking, because I'm conscious of time and I really want to ask you about evangelism. It's something that maybe I just haven't come across, but I know obviously, you said you're a Canberra evangelist. Do you mind explaining what
Yeah.
it is? How it works?
So evangelism comes from a Greek word meaning bringing the good news. So as a marketing and sales concept, it's the theory that when you have a great product or a great service, it is good news. It is not just a way to make a buck. And so the difference between evangelism and sales is that evangelism has the other person's best interest at heart too. So when I evangelized Macintosh, I truly did believe, and I still believe, that Macintosh is good for me as an Apple employee or shareholder, but it's also good for you because it's going to make you more creative and productive. The same thing is true with Canva. Like, don't get me wrong, it's great if you use Canva, but I truly do believe that Canva is going to make you into a much better communicator and someone who can use graphic design. So that's what evangelism is. I could make the case that it's the purest form of sales or the purest form of marketing because you have the other person's best interests at heart too.
That sounds sort of, I guess sometimes when people think about sales, they sometimes feel like something's being pushed on them. But actually,
sometimes.
No, I guess that's always the feeling, but this is sort of the other way around, which is quite, I guess, do you feel like that feels like a nicer role to have?
Well, I think it's a purer role to have, and like you couldn't. It's a kind of oxymoronic that you could not evangelize something that you do not believe in, whereas you could sell something you don't believe in.
Oh, that's
There's a
interesting.
big difference.
Yeah. Do you think companies that have evangelists are sort of companies with a certain kind of mindset? Do you think it's sort of specific to certain organizations?
Well, I hope so. I hope they believe that, they want to change the world and make the world a better place for their customers. I mean, as opposed to, I don't know, like it would be hard for me to conceptualize a tobacco company having evangelists, right? Like, so I'm bringing you the good news. If you smoke cigarettes, you're going to die. I mean, you're going to have bad breath. Your teeth is going to be yellow and eventually you're going to die. That's what I stand for. That's my good news. Hard to imagine that that's an evangelist.
That's a very good example. I was so having worked for these companies, I guess that's kind of the external aspect of it. But do you think that these companies have like a certain type of company culture in order to kind of create sort of that mindset that everybody has?
Well, I don't know about in a perfect world, you'd have a growth mindset company with growth mindset employees who have a great product that makes the world a better place for their customers. That's the perfect world. It's kind of what Apple does, actually. I don't work for Apple anymore. That's certainly what Canva does. I can tell you that. So yeah, that would be the perfect world. But we don't live in a perfect world. So I sometimes you just got to do what you got to do. What can I say? I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think, I'm not naive. I don't think that everybody can work for a company that has a great product that makes everybody's life better. That's kind of a hard test. On the other hand, there are tobacco companies, right? And I mean, if you look at something like the like Juul, the what do you call that? What do you call that? Where they have where you puff the thing,
Oh,
the electric cigarette. Yeah.
yeah.
So I mean, I guess you could spin that as saying, well, that's evangelistic because it's much safer than smoking cigarettes, but it's addictive and it's adding bad stuff to you. I mean, maybe less worse than cigarettes, but it's not exactly good, right? So not everything can be sold with evangelism.
No. Okay. Yeah, I guess, that's definitely very true. What would you advise somebody who is sort of leaving college, leaving university, and thinking about sort of making that first step into the working world? Sort of what?
Yeah, well, let me tell you something. I face this question all the time. And I think you need to chillax because if you're just graduating from the university, you're going to be working for the next 60, 70 years, right? I mean, people are living longer and longer. I think that you're going to have, 4, 5, 6, 7 jobs. And I think that you need to stop worrying about finding the perfect job that you're going to stay in for the rest of your life, because it ain't happening. I mean, people don't stay in jobs for the rest of their lives. So, and I would almost make the case that you cannot make a mistake in the first few jobs, because even if you take a job that you hate or the company implodes, I think you'll learn a lot
Mm-hmm.
when you make that kind of mistake. I could make the case that, you graduate from university, you go to work for a startup, and then 5 years later, you're worth $50 million, and you're thinking, oh my God, I did everything right. And then the rest of your life, you're going to be thinking that you caused this success, when really you were just dumb shit lucky and you had nothing to do with it. And you're going to have this like weird, warped perspective of what you did. And you're going to be just sort of miserable asshole the rest of your life. It would be better to fail and be humbled than that.
Mm.
Not that I'm suggesting you go look for failure, but so I'm just saying, chillax. I mean, just, of course, don't tell my kids I said, take it easy, relax, don't hurry up. But I mean,
Yeah, I guess that's quite relieving, because I think that is one of the things that people are probably most concerned about. And you see people sort of very laser sort of focus at getting a specific job. Whereas I guess, as long as it's a good fit for an aspect of whatever you're kind of looking for, that's probably okay for that
well,
part of your life.
I think that as long as you're learning, you're doing okay.
Mm.
That's the test. That's the test. Are you learning?
Do you think sort of, I guess it goes back to sort of growth mindset, but do you think sort of having that sort of curiosity is sort of more important than sort of like fostering that than fostering a specific skill? Do you think that's kind of more important sort of early on?
Oh, I first of all, I don't think that. I think that's a false dichotomy. I don't think that you have to say to yourself, well, I can either foster a specific skill, or I can foster this mindset. I mean, you can do both. But what I caution young people is, don't believe that you have to find your quote passion. I think that's a very dangerous thing, because it implies that someday you're going to just instantly fall in love and you're going to do this for the rest of your life and live happily ever after. That's very unlikely. So what I think you should do is you should scratch these itches and these interests. So you may find something interesting and pursue it for a while. And you may find something else interesting, pursue that for a while. And over the course of time, you'll really figure out what you really love to do. But to set yourself up for failure by saying, oh my God, I need to find my passion in life and dedicate my life to that. I'm 70 years old. I found my passions about 6 times. I mean, don't sweat it. And to use a dating analogy, if your parents say to you, listen, you're 22 years old, how come you're not married? How come you don't have your life partner established? Like, how come you haven't found your passion in life? I would say that that's a very similar argument, and you should tell your parents, listen, I'm still collecting data. That's why.
Yeah, that is really interesting, because I guess people are probably, with dating, shifting towards the mindset of that's bizarre. But yeah, haven't quite shifted in terms of careers, I don't think. That's interesting.
You can ponder that after we end this
I
interview.
spent a lot of time pondering a lot of things. Um, on the topic of failure, do you have any advice for, um, obviously failure's fine, but and often you need to
Well, I don't know about obviously failure is
no,
fine,
no,
but
I was
okay.
gonna say sometimes things don't work out, and so you try.
Yes, yes.
But do you sort of, at what point do you know when to stop?
You mean when to give up and try to change?
Yeah.
Again, this goes back to our discussion of conflicting advice, because you can ask people, when do you give up? And people say, you never give up. And then other people will say, yeah, as soon as you figure out that your gut tells you it's not right, then you pivot and you do something else.
Mhm.
And I can cite you examples of success stories going either way. And therein lies the question, because there is no way to tell you that, only this way works or only this way works, because frankly, both ways can work and other ways can work. So, I mean, if a book purports to tell you that we got the right answers for everything, you should not buy that book. That book is written by a megalomaniac, delusional psychopath.
Do you think we're all kind of searching too hard for answers and we should just sort of do it and find out?
Well, I don't know if you should be searching for answers, but you should be searching for data. You should be trying stuff. I mean, I'm not advocating that you just sit there like a lump on a log and expect the universe to revolve around you. I mean, as the Chinese say, it's a great proverb that you have to stand by the side of a river a very long time before a Peking duck will fly into your mouth. You can ponder that too.
That is an interesting saying, but I can see how that would be. Gosh, I don't think I'm going to be able to sleep tonight. I'm going to be too full.
we can alter that for cultures. You have to stand by the side of the river a long time before a croissant will fly in your mouth, or maybe for you, before fish and chips fly in your mouth, or barbecue ribs fly in your mouth. Doesn't have to be a Peking duck. Try to keep a straight face as an interviewer. It adds to the professional image.
Yeah, we just like to enjoy ourselves. Would you call yourself a remarkable person, or?
That's an interesting question. I'm not known for my modesty, but when I think of someone remarkable, for example, I think the most remarkable person alive today is Jane Goodall.
Mhm.
Okay. So now, do I think I'm a Jane Goodall? Not at all. I mean, I'm 1/10 of a Jane Goodall, although 1/10 of a Jane Goodall is pretty good,
Yeah,
right?
be 1/10 of a Jane Goodall.
So yeah, I mean, if I look at my guest list, Jane Goodall, Stacey Abrams, Margaret Atwood, Martha Stewart, Stephen Wolfram, Angela Duckworth, Carol Dweck, man, it's hard for me to mentally think that I'm their peer. I don't. But you know what? One of my goals, I'll put my ego out there, is that I want to be known as the best interviewer in the world.
Oh, okay, that's a good one. Yeah, with your 250 hours of podcast practice, I guess I'm sure you've had lots of other points of interviewing.
Yeah, I mean, I want you to listen to some of those interviews and see if you think I'm a good interviewer. Because
I have. Well, I've listened to the podcast, and it's definitely engaging, and I've definitely enjoyed it. I particularly like the Margaret Atwood one; that was really good. But I'm also a Margaret Atwood fan, so maybe I'm a bit biased.
well, that was done very early in my podcast, and I had to jump through hoops to get that. I really had to scramble and crawl and beg for that interview, and uh, I could do a better interview of Margaret Atwood today, but you got to take what you can get. And I think I got about 15 minutes with her, and I usually get 60.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I would love to have Margaret Atwood again. Do you know, this is a very interesting factoid for you that you can also, another thing to ponder tonight is that Margaret Atwood is the first person to drop an F-bomb on my podcast. Like, how many people can say that, right? I mean, Margaret Atwood dropped the F-bomb on my podcast. I'm going to put that on my gravestone.
Yeah, I'm almost not surprised. She's incredibly remarkable.
Yeah.
I think that's everything I have to ask.
Okay. Well, we covered a lot, and
Yeah, I really appreciate your time.
you just in your mind, you keep thinking of me standing by the ocean waiting for the Peking duck to fly in my mouth.
With your surfboard by your side.
All right. All the best to you. Isn't it, it's nighttime there. You better go to sleep. And oh,
Well, it's nearly 8, so it's still sunny. It's not too bad, but
oh,
I have enough
oh.
time to think before bed.
Are you in London?
We're just sort of outside of London. Yeah,
I love London.
yeah, it's so nice.
I love, and this is going to show you what humble beginnings I have, but my favorite place to eat in London is Wagamama. I love Wagamama. I could eat at Wagamama every day. When I go to London, sometimes I literally eat at Wagamama every day.
Really?
I love Wagamama. I eat in Wagamama at Heathrow, and then I eat at the one, what's the name of your department store? Not Harrods, the other one.
Yeah, Selfridges?
Yes, there's a Wagamama at Selfridges, right?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, there is. Trust me, I know. And then there's one by the Apple store. I know all the Wagamamas. I love Wagamama.
This is like, so if anybody wants to see if they can find Guy if he's in the UK, they just need to go to a Wagamama.
That's pretty much true. I mean, you probably think a guy like Guy is eating at Nobu, but no, I'm not at Nobu. I am at Wagamama. Now, I may want to stay at, is it the Mayfair House? Is that what's the one by Hyde Park?
And I think that's right.
I'll be staying at the Mayfair, but I'm eating at Wagamama. Okay.
That's so cute.
Okay. All righty.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. I really appreciate that.
Oh, my pleasure.
Yeah.
Please tell your listeners to read Think Remarkable. I truly do believe it will help them lead a remarkable life.
I absolutely will.
All right. Take care.
You too. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
So I think the key takeaway here is the importance of a growth mindset, which we can develop as individuals, but also making sure that you're in a supportive environment that also fosters this, an environment where employees are encouraged to grow, experiment, and even fail. So thanks again so much to Guy Kawasaki for coming on the pod. And if you're an organization with a growth mindset, we'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching this episode of the Halo Aid podcast. If you like what you see, you can follow for more. And if you're interested in being a guest, you can email us at podcast@imaginatehalo.com.